I don't think most people truly understand what a 27% death rate actually means. Sure, we throw around statistics all the time, percentages that sound scary on paper but don't really stick with us. But here's what 27% looks like in reality. For every 100 climbers who successfully reach a summit, 27 people die trying. That's not a war zone casualty rate. That's not a terminal illness survival statistic. That's a mountain, a single mountain that humans voluntarily choose to climb, knowing full well that they're essentially playing Russian roulette with their lives. The subtle good news is that at least they know the odds going in. The bad news, though, is that knowing the danger doesn't make you any safer when you're 8,000 meters high and an avalanche decides it's your turn. When people talk about the world's deadliest mountains, K2 usually dominates the conversation. And yeah, K2 is brutal. It has the reputation, the nickname Savage Mountain, the climbing difficulty that makes even experienced alpinists nervous. But there's another peak, one that doesn't get nearly as much attention, that makes K2 look almost forgiving by comparison. Tucked away in the heart of the Himalayas, standing at 891 meters, is Annapurna, the 10th highest mountain in the world, the first of the 8,000ers ever successfully summited, and statistically, the deadliest mountain on Earth. Less than 400 people in history have reached its peak. Compare that to Everest's tens of thousands. The reason? Annapurna doesn't just test you, it actively tries to kill you. Hurricane-level winds at the summit, avalanches that can cascade down at any moment from its treacherous face, high altitude that reduces oxygen to the point where your brain starts shutting down, technical climbing difficulty that demands perfection when your body is already shutting down. One wrong step, one sudden weather change, one miscalculation, and Annapurna claims another victim. This is the story of why Annapurna has earned its nickname, the Silent Killer. Let's talk numbers for a second. Annapurna has a death rate of 27%. Mount Everest, the mountain everyone knows, the one that dominates every conversation about deadly peaks, sits at 3.2%. That's not a typo. Annapurna is nearly 9 times deadlier than Everest. Here's what that 27% actually looks like in human terms. For every 100 climbers who successfully summit Annapurna, 27 people die trying to do the same thing. Not from unrelated accidents years later. Not from other mountains. From Annapurna itself. Less than 400 people in recorded history have reached its summit. Compare that to Everest's tens of thousands of successful climbers, and you start to understand just how different these mountains really are. Part of what makes Annapurna so lethal isn't just the mountain itself. It's where the mountain is. Tucked deep in the Himalayan range spanning Nepal and Tibet, Annapurna sits as part of a compact mountain cluster called the Annapurna Massif. There isn't a quick helicopter ride to base camp. It's a brutal 6-day trek through some of the most demanding terrain on Earth. Most climbers start at Chame, then push through Ferrara, navigate past Pungan Hill, and finally arrive at base camp already exhausted. The journey forces you through dense forests where visibility disappears, across rivers that can sweep you away if you misstep, and over high-altitude plateaus where the air starts thinning before you've even reached the real mountain. The lower elevations are beautiful, honestly. Over 6,000 types of plant life, hundreds of bird species, tea houses scattered along the route, offering warm food and hot showers. It almost feels manageable, but that beauty is deceptive. Here's why location translates directly to death. When something goes wrong on Annapurna, and something almost always goes wrong, helicopter rescues are rare, not just difficult, rare. The terrain is too remote, too treacherous, too unpredictable for reliable air support. A medical emergency that would be survivable on Everest becomes fatal on Annapurna simply because help can't reach you in time. And unlike Everest, where Sherpas are heavily invested in the climbing industry and willing to risk their lives for rescue operations, the locals around Annapurna aren't as engaged with mountaineering. They're less willing to put themselves in danger for climbers. That's not judgment, that's reality. It means when you're in trouble, you're on your own. Now, let's talk about what makes Annapurna exclusive. At 26,645 feet, or 891 meters, it's the 10th highest peak in the world. For perspective, the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building humanity has ever constructed, stands at 2,000 feet. Annapurna is nearly 10 times taller. Being above 8,000 meters puts Annapurna in an elite club with only 13 other mountains on Earth. They're called the 8,000ers. And here's the twist that makes Annapurna's danger even more remarkable. Despite its brutal reputation, despite its 27% death rate, Annapurna was the first of these 8,000ers to ever be successfully summited. In 1950, when nobody had even attempted any peak above 8,000 meters, two climbers decided Annapurna would be their target. They made it. Barely. But altitude and isolation are just the foundation of Annapurna's lethality. The real nightmare starts when you factor in what's waiting in the sky. Above 8,000 meters, the human body starts dying. Not slowly, not eventually, immediately. This altitude threshold has a name that doesn't sugarcoat what it means. The death zone. Here's what happens up there. Atmospheric pressure falls dramatically. Oxygen molecules spread further and further apart. Your lungs work harder, pulling in more air with each breath, but there's less oxygen in that air to actually circulate through your bloodstream. Your muscles don't get what they need. Your brain doesn't get what it needs. The result is crushing fatigue, waves of nausea, and disorientation that makes you forget where you are or what you're doing. To survive at these altitudes, climbers need time to acclimatize. Let their bodies adjust gradually. But here's Annapurna's cruel twist. Many of its camps sit in high-risk avalanche zones, which means you can't stay long enough to properly acclimatize. You're stuck choosing between dying from lack of oxygen or dying from being buried alive. Now add temperature to that equation. At Annapurna's peak, temperatures plunge to -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of us have experienced cold hands before. Painful, numb fingers that we warm up by a heater or under hot water. Imagine that feeling, but it's your entire body, and you're clinging to a sharp rock face 8,000 meters above sea level, while hurricane-force winds try to rip you off the mountain. That's not a metaphor. In 1950, when Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachenal became the first people ever to summit an 8,000er, they chose Annapurna. They made it to the top. They made it back down, and they lost everything. All 10 toes, most of their fingers, just gone. Sacrificed to frostbite. That's what success looks like on this mountain. But altitude and cold are predictable. You know they're coming. Annapurna's weather, though, doesn't play by any rules. Conditions can turn lethal in minutes. Even when forecasts look perfect, the mountain can conjure storms out of nowhere. Temperatures that were manageable suddenly plummet. Winds that were steady suddenly spike to dangerous speeds. October 2014 proved just how indiscriminately Annapurna's weather kills. That month, unusually severe snowstorms hammered the Annapurna region. But these storms didn't just hit climbers attempting the summit. They hit the Annapurna Circuit, a popular trekking route that circles the mountain. People love this trek because it's accessible. You don't need a tent. You don't need extensive mountaineering experience. The views are spectacular, and the infrastructure is solid. Because it's considered relatively easy, trekkers don't pack heavily. They're not expecting disaster. In October 2014, that assumption killed them. Temperatures rapidly plunged. Lightly equipped walkers found themselves trapped at over 5,000 meters with no shelter, no warm gear, and no way down. Search and rescue teams managed to save around 400 people, pulling them out of the storm in desperate operations. But at least 43 people died, frozen, buried, lost. It's been described as Nepal's worst trekking disaster in history. And here's what makes it so terrifying. These weren't climbers attempting the summit. These were casual trekkers on a popular route. Annapurna's weather doesn't care about your experience level or your intentions. So you've got impossible altitude and killer weather. Now imagine actually trying to climb this thing. Unlike Everest, where fixed ropes guide you up well-traveled routes and Sherpas are everywhere, Annapurna doesn't offer that kind of support. The mountain is far less traveled. Resources are scarce. You're mostly on your own. For this climb, we're following the Dutch Rib route. It's dangerous, but it slightly reduces the avalanche risk. Slightly. Base camp sits at 41 meters, which is actually lower than most other 8,000ers. K2's base camp is nearly 1,000 meters higher. The ground here is described as beach-like, and it can be surprisingly warm. There's a strong sense of community. Climbers share the same mix of excitement and dread, knowing what's ahead. Many Sherpas won't even attempt Annapurna without performing the puja ceremony first. It's a ritual asking the mountain gods for safe passage, not a tradition, a necessity. The first section to Camp 1 is relatively manageable. In really dry conditions, you can make it in trainers. Most of the time, though, you'll hit thick snow before gaining serious altitude. Experienced climbers often skip Camp 1 entirely on their summit push. It's just not worth the time. Camp 1 to Camp 2 is where things get real. You're crossing a massive glacier riddled with hundreds of tiny cracks and gaps. One wrong step, and you're gone. The route includes multiple sharp inclines through deep snow, and every single step is exhausting. Your body is screaming for oxygen it's not getting. Then there are the small ice walls you have to climb. Camp 2 is a wide-open area on snow, but the avalanche risk is so high that staying there feels like playing Russian roulette. You rest as briefly as possible. The climb to Camp 3 is steep and covered in fixed snow. You're navigating the Dutch Rib now, a sharp, elevated ridge. Parts of it are hollow, so finding solid footing is a gamble. The final section is a Sirac, a towering block of glacial ice that drains every bit of stamina you have left. Camp 3 sits on top of a hanging glacier, surrounded by crevasses. There is no safe point on Annapurna's ascent. None. And you're supposed to rest and recover here at 7,000 meters, where sleep is nearly impossible, and your equipment freezes solid overnight. Camp 3 to Camp 4 is mercifully short, but it's mostly a brutal vertical wall that tests your already destroyed body. The final push from Camp 4 to the summit follows what's described as simple, tiring ramps. But here's the reality. Your body is receiving almost no oxygen. You've already climbed over 300 meters from base camp. You haven't slept properly in days. You're simultaneously freezing and drenched in sweat. You know an avalanche could hit at any second. Your supplementary oxygen supply is running low, and yet, somehow, you find the will to keep moving. One step, then another, until finally you're standing on top of the world, seeing views that most humans will never experience. But here's the thing they don't tell you. Reaching the summit isn't the end. It's barely the halfway point. 80% of mountaineering accidents happen on the way down. Exhaustion, depleted oxygen, and the false security of having made it create a deadly combination. And we still haven't talked about Annapurna's biggest threat. All mountains above 8,000 meters have avalanche risk. It's simple physics. The bigger the mountain, the more snow accumulates. More snow means more potential for catastrophic slides. This is true for Everest, K2, and every other 8,000er. But Annapurna takes this danger and amplifies it to a level that defies logic. Most climbing routes on Annapurna force you to spend extended periods in direct avalanche zones. You can't avoid them. You can't go around them. You have to pass through areas where thousands of tons of snow could bury you at any moment. And there's nothing you can do about it. Annapurna's composition makes it worse. The mountain consists of extremely steep slopes that encourage rapid snow buildup, followed by sudden, violent releases. Combine that with the region's unpredictable temperature swings and wind patterns, and you've created perfect avalanche conditions. They don't happen occasionally, they happen constantly. As you're climbing from base camp to Camp 1, you can actually see avalanches tearing down Annapurna's face. You watch from a distance as entire sections of the mountain just let go. Tons of snow and ice cascading downward at speeds that would pulverize anything in their path. Witnessing that kind of destruction is one thing. Being caught in it is something else entirely. There's documentary footage that captures this reality with brutal clarity. A group of 31 climbers decided to take the Dutch Rib route instead of the standard approach. From Camp 2, they watched a massive avalanche obliterate the standard route, the very route they had considered taking. If they had made that choice, all 31 would be dead. Not injured, not rescued, dead. The margin between survival and death on Annapurna isn't measured in skill or preparation. Sometimes it's just which route you happen to pick that morning. Here's what happens if an avalanche hits you while you're clinging to a thin rope at 7,000 meters. You get swept away like a feather in the wind. The force is incomprehensible. There's no holding on, no digging in, no chance. You're just gone. And rescue? Forget it. If an avalanche takes you on Annapurna, your body might never be recovered. The mountain keeps what it claims. Every single step on Annapurna is a calculated gamble. Avalanches don't announce themselves. They don't wait for bad weather. Sometimes they just happen because temperature shifted slightly, or wind patterns changed, or for no reason anyone can identify. Climbers accept this going in. They know the mountain might kill them at any moment through no fault of their own. And still, they climb. Why? Because beyond all that danger lies something most humans will never see. Majestic snow-covered peaks stretching endlessly in every direction. The golden glow of sunrise at 8,000 meters, where the sky turns colors that don't exist anywhere else. Views reserved for the very few who survive the gamble. There's something in the human spirit that needs to test itself against the impossible. That craves standing where almost no one has stood, even when the cost might be everything. That's Annapurna, towering peaks, devastating avalanches, and odds that should make anyone turn back. But some people look at those odds and climb anyway. Since 1950, when Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachenal became the first humans to summit an 8,000er, Annapurna has maintained its deadly reputation. Those two pioneers made it to the top and back, but they paid a horrific price. All their toes, most of their fingers, gone, sacrificed to frostbite. That's what victory looks like on Annapurna. And still, climbers keep coming. Less than 400 have succeeded, but hundreds more have tried and failed. Some failed by turning back. Others failed by dying. Here's what sets Annapurna apart from mountains like Everest, or even K2. Everest has infrastructure, support, established routes, constant helicopter traffic. K2 has a reputation that makes people think twice before attempting it. But Annapurna, it's remote enough that rescue is nearly impossible, unpredictable enough that perfect conditions can turn fatal in minutes, and avalanche-prone enough that you're never truly safe anywhere on the mountain. The 27% death rate isn't an anomaly, it's not bad luck. It's the mountain showing you exactly what it is. The 2014 snowstorm disaster proved that Annapurna's danger extends beyond just summit attempts. 43 people died on a popular trekking route, not even attempting the peak itself. That's the thing about this mountain. It doesn't care if you're an elite climber with decades of experience or a casual trekker just trying to see some pretty views. The weather doesn't discriminate. The avalanches don't pick favorites. The altitude affects everyone the same way. And yet, I can't help but understand why people still try. There's something in the human spirit that needs to test itself against the impossible. That craves standing where almost no one else has stood. That wants to look out across the Himalayas from 8 to 91 meters and know, for just a moment, what it feels like to be on top of the world, even if the cost might be everything. That's Annapurna, the silent killer, the 27% mountain, the gamble that 400 people have won and hundreds more have lost. Would you take those odds? Drop your thoughts below.